Well, thank you all very much. It's a great honor to be here, and I really appreciate this chance to talk about Turkish-American relations and also to talk about the entire Turkish Shipbuilders Association and the opportunities we have, I think, to work together. Actually, maybe in a very appropriate week to be together based on the President's speech in Saudi Arabia, which I thought had a very important pattern that I hope is going to be replicated a lot in the near future. And that's when he came back again and again, speaking with all of the leaders of the Sunni world, talking about a partnership. Because if you think about it, the essence of American power and the essence of American security from 1939 on has been a function of how many partners we've had around the world and our ability to creatively build partnerships and to work together. And as we enter a very complicated world, whether you're dealing with Iran or you're dealing with Russia or you're dealing with China or you're dealing with international terrorism, as we saw tragically last night in Manchester, the world's complex, and it's not going to get less complex in the near future. And to the degree that we can sustain civilization, to go back to part of President Trump's theme in Riyadh, we're going to sustain it because everybody who has a common interest in it decides that working together gives them a combined power and a combined capability dramatically greater than it would be if they were trying to do it in isolation. And I think that this is a constant debate in the United States, and Americans often forget the degree to which we have been successful, starting with World War II up through the Cold War to today, is directly related to the scale of the alliances that we sustain and to the ability to think ahead and to think long term. Remember, when we decided reluctantly that we were engaged in a Cold War with our World War II ally, the Soviet Union, we ultimately built an alliance system, which Turkey is an integral part of, which lasted 44 years. We had liberal presidents, we had conservative presidents, we had Republican presidents, we had Democratic presidents, we had Congresses that were very frustrating, and then we had Congresses that were extremely frustrating. That's the nature of Congress. It ranges between very and extremely. We have never had an unfrustrating Congress, including the first one. But no matter what was happening, NATO was sustained, and the alliance with Turkey was an integral part of that. And so I think as we look to the future, and I note that the President is going to a meeting with NATO on his trip, and I think that in that sense, the team he's assembled, when I look at General Mattis as Secretary of Defense, or I look at General McMaster as the National Security Advisor, or Rex Tillerson as the Secretary of State, this is a fairly remarkable team. I'm an Army brat, so I do note on behalf of General Jones that somewhere between General Mattis and General Kelly we're very close to tilt in the number of Marines in the cabinet. But it's a first-class team of professionals. I would also note, I don't know how many of you, let me ask, I'm curious. In the trip to Riyadh, how many of you saw the sword dancing? Anybody raise your hand? Okay. Now I have to tell all of you, Clifton and I were at home and getting some stuff done around the house, and we look up, and all of a sudden here's 100 guys in white robes carrying swords, which I thought, in terms of dealing with the Secret Service, had to be an amazing, I mean, can you imagine the conversation? Hi, we're so glad your president's coming. We're going to have this little sword dance, and 100 guys with swords are going to hang out with him for a while. But I was watching it, and I had two moments that are personal. I've known Wilbur Ross a long time. And there's a moment when Wilbur is doing a sword dance. Do any of you who have ever seen Wilbur Ross? No. He doesn't look like a sword dancer. But he was standing there, he was so happy with the agreements they'd signed and the size of the various contracts they'd signed that he was just dancing away. He had no idea what he was doing. So I texted him in the middle of all this. I said, Clifton and I are watching you do a sword dance. And he immediately, about 2 minutes later, he texted me back. He says, if you keep watching, I'm about to teach a falcon how to do a sword dance. And he's going to have a falcon on his arm and do the sword dance there with his sword. He's holding a sword. He has no idea what he's doing. By contrast, and this is part of the Trump ability to do things we can't, you can never predict Trump. I have a new book coming out called Understanding Trump. It is not called Predicting Trump, because you cannot predict Trump. I cannot tell you what he'll do tomorrow morning because he's not sure what he's going to do tomorrow morning. So there's no point in predicting him. but he does have a pretty good ability to pick personnel. So Tillerson is doing the sword dance, and Tillerson's doing it really well, because ExxonMobil is the largest private investor in Saudi Arabia. Tillerson has been there over and over, and he said at one point to a reporter, he said, "This was not my first sword dance. I've been doing this, you know." And if you notice the meeting when the Saudi foreign minister and Tillerson had a joint press conference, the foreign minister kept referring to him as Rex, because they've known each other, I think, for 35 years. And they're getting things done, which is the point I want to make, because it relates so much to Turkish-American relations. We have been astonishingly successful. You go back and you look, for example, my father fought in the Korean War, and you look at the commitment Turkey made in Korea. You look at how long we've been together, how much we have done things together. And we've been successful because we saw a larger vision of defending civilization, that even when we had arguments, and there were certainly times we did, even when there were political upheavals in both countries, Watergate being an American example, and various moments when generals intervened being Turkish examples, we nonetheless understood there was this larger relationship that really mattered. Now, the reason I was fascinated when I had a chance to talk with representatives of the Turkish shipbuilders, and the reason I'm so glad that they decided to come and be a part of this get-together and to really share with Americans some of the opportunities, is I think here is, if you think of the Black Sea, and you think of the various complexities that we're going to face in the Black Sea, and I just came back from 3 days in Kiev last week, and you look at situations involving Crimea, involving Eastern Ukraine, what you know is that you want to find a way to knit together all of the countries who have an interest in the Black Sea so that they can work together. So whether you're talking about Romania, or you're talking about Bulgaria, or you're talking about Ukraine, Turkey, and the American interest in sustaining an open Black Sea and sustaining an ability to minimize adventurism on the part of the Russian government. And I think that's dramatically better done as a coalition, working together, talking together, practicing together, than it is done in isolation or hoping that bad things will go away, as opposed to protecting yourself and thinking it through and developing it. I think it's also accurate to say that as everyone talks with each other, the attitude of go back and look at the agreement just completed in Riyadh and then think about a Turkish analogy to that. That is, in Riyadh, they just signed very large agreements that are going to include co-production, they're going to include arms, they include private sector activities. Similarly, you have an opportunity working together to develop the immediate geographic proximity of the Turkish shipbuilders, both for the Eastern Mediterranean and for the Black Sea. We have an opportunity to develop a joint relationship in which American shipbuilders and Turkish shipbuilders work together to be competitive around the world and to do things, particularly on the repair side, but also on building smaller ships and building them inexpensively by the standard of modern ships. Nothing is inexpensive, but relatively inexpensively. In addition, there are some offset opportunities when we're in the process of selling missile defense systems and F-35s and other kind of capabilities, that working with Turkish shipbuilders gives our largest corporations a real opportunity to have creative offset examples where they can work together and they can pull together. I think this sort of combined effort can make a big difference. I also think the revolution in technology, which we are seeing everywhere. I mean, you see it in the smartphone you're carrying. We were just chatting, and they were briefing me a little bit about the Bosphorus and the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara, et cetera. And somebody pulls out their smartphone and starts pulling together, showing me the map and expanding the map and pointing in the direction. Well, as all of you know, this was impossible 25 years ago. All of the new technologies mean that in order to have the optimum level of naval survival, we're going to go through revolutions in technology. We're going to have to retrofit ships over and over again in order to survive. And all of this offers a tremendous opportunity to create an American-Turkish partnership in shipbuilding, particularly as it relates to smaller ships. because if you're going to compete in places like the Persian Gulf, if you're going to compete anywhere in a littoral environment, you're going to have a lot of small ships. They're going to have to be survivable, and being survivable in the modern world is going to be hard, and it's going to require constant innovation. And when we finish the innovation, it means you got to go back and modernize your fleet, because you don't replace fleets fast enough to only have the newest ships be survivable. So you have to constantly be rethinking. Now, we do this pretty well. We've done it for a long time. We astonishingly do it with aircraft, which is why you can have B-52s, which are older than the people flying them, because it's not the same airplane it was when it was first built. But I do think that what you have here is an opportunity to develop a partnership. And I just want to say one last thing about how important this is. The world is not inherently safe. From North Korea, which I think is probably the most dangerous place on the planet, to the Iranian effort to develop nuclear weapons, to the rise of an international terrorism, which showed itself last night, but which exists across the planet in ways that we really don't yet have a successful strategy for defeating, to the rise of China as a genuine peer competitor. The Chinese are going to be everywhere on the planet in a competent, intelligent, hard-working way, and that's going to be a reality we all have to deal with. To the fact that Russia, under Putin, is an adventurous state which is unfortunately unreliable and unpredictable, and which has to be managed in some way. All of these different things mean that those of us who want to live in freedom, and those of us who want to live in prosperity, and those of us who want to live in safety, have to find ways to work together and to knit us together. And particularly when we go through periods of political turmoil, we have to find methods by which our businesses and our professional institutions and our militaries sustain the relationship during periods of tension. Now, we've done it pretty well for almost 80 years, but the game is going to be faster, more complex, and in some ways more challenging. And I think finding a way to work together, finding a way for American shipbuilders, the American Navy, to work with the Turkish Navy and to work with Turkish shipbuilders is one of those building blocks of integrating us together that will help us throughout not just the Black Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean, but is a pretty good model for activities we need to engage in all around the planet, and fits almost precisely with what the President described in his speech at Riyadh this week. So I'm delighted to be here, to have a chance to share these ideas with you. I think this is an important meeting, and I hope that you're very successful in finding ways to work together to be jointly profitable and to together to give us the most competent and most effective naval power that both countries need in order to maintain our safety. Thank you all very, very much.